We open to a devastated Miguel O'Hara. With pure shock and agony on his face, the Spider-Man of the future was ruined. This can't be. I was supposed to wind up in 2099. This can't be my home. I don't know what the shock this is. Surrounded by the ruins of a great city, Spider-Man was terrified. This couldn't be Nueva York. He'd never seen anything like this before. There was no way anyone had survived this. Miguel could only conclude that he was the only survivor of 2099. Despite his confusion, Miguel could sense something. And less than a second later, a thin but lethal laser blasted him, sending the Spider-Man of the future crashing down. Nice shot. Thanks, Ash. Any idea who the hell he is? Two strange figures stood over the downed web crawler, ready to loot him as if they were playing Fortnite. As one of the men raised Spider-Man's body, ready to find treasure, he couldn't locate a mark or injury. The laser seemed to have not hit. You didn't. I'm fast. Really fast. With his hand on the man's neck, Miguel now had the advantage. In an instant, Spider-Man took control of the situation, throwing the first man into the other. He began webbing them up and commanded them to tell him what had happened here. With his claws out over the face of the two webbed-up men, Miguel would begin asking questions. Quickly, he'd gather that they were scanners, men that scan the area to see if there's anything worth bringing home. This home was on the outskirts of Dystopia, a name that was strangely familiar for Miguel. He would have them lead him to this place they spoke of, and in this unfamiliar environment, Miguel would have to trust that they were truly leading him where he requested. Of course, he had his own way of persuading them also. As they reached the summit of a hill, the two strange men had the Spider-Man of 2099 promise that he wouldn't kill them or anyone over the hill. Miguel, of course, dismissed that request. Unexpectedly, the camp below the hill was deserted. There was supposed to be activity here, but everyone was gone with the wind. None of this was making sense, and Miguel was no closer to figuring out what was going on. Before the small group could think long, though, a scream would break out, and the two strange men were being swept away. It was a group of armed soldiers, now with their weapons aimed at the web crawler. "Who are you supposed to be?" Spider-Man 2099 called out before being told that he doesn't get to ask questions. Shots would blast towards Spider-Man, but these men had no idea who they were dealing with. Miguel would acrobatically flip in the air over the shots and towards the armed men. I'm really starting to hate this world. As he easily delivered a beating on his assailants, Miguel was really tired of this. Everyone kept shooting at him and he was no closer to figuring out what had happened. Mid-thought, a sonic blast would blow Spider-Man away from his earlier attackers. As he crashed into the earth, Miguel would be stunned. I've never felt anything like that in my life. No, wait, I have. Oh my god, I have. Spider-Man? After all this time, could it truly be? Towering over Miguel was Maestro, the future incarnation of the Hulk. Miguel would recover. Maestro, what are you doing here? Maestro would be intrigued by this. He was unsure of how Spider-Man knew him, and at the same time, Miguel was trying to understand why Maestro didn't recognize him. As the two faced off, a small battle of words would be had, during which Miguel would reveal that he got here from time travel. The interaction made it clear to Miguel that Maestro believed he was Peter Parker. With a sinister smile, Maestro would ask Spider-Man to bring him back into the past when he goes back later. Always a humorous one, Miguel would happily oblige, telling Maestro to wait here while he goes and gets the time machine nearby. This only enraged the Hulk of the future, though. He slammed into the ground where Miguel stood. "Do you think I'm a fool?" Their fight would now begin. The Green Beast could now not be stopped. On the attack, he would roar out, "I do not like being lied to!" Spider-Man would do well to dodge these attacks, but Maestro was patient, believing that Miguel would sooner or later run out of energy. The giant would be shut up by a clean kick across the jaw. God, everybody in this universe just yammers on and on. Maestro would grab the web crawler's leg. Was that intended to hurt? With intent to squash the 2099 bug, Maestro would slam Spider-Man into the earth. He wouldn't stop there, though. Still holding on, the beast would slam his prey over and over again into the earth, breaking ribs and tearing up the spider. Miguel knew that Maestro wasn't even really trying. He was just amusing himself until he got bored. Thinking this, as Maestro did in fact get bored, and let Miguel go, sending him crashing again into the ground. Spider-Man 2099 had never been hit so hard in his life. He couldn't move and could barely breathe. Things looked grim. Miguel was going to die in a world that made no sense. Maestro towered over Miguel. Bring him. The giant walked away, leaving Spider-Man to the armed men he'd fought with earlier. With the fight over for now and the group ready to travel, Maestro would ask some questions. How did Spider-Man really arrive here? Miguel was more interested in what had happened to this world. Maestro would entertain that question, explaining that it involved a company called Alchemax. This sounded familiar to Miguel. They were responsible. A program they were behind half a century ago went horribly wrong, leading to nukes and chaos. Before the conversation could go on much longer, though, they had arrived and it was home. Miguel had gotten some information, but Maestro had received nothing from Spider-Man. The two men from the start of this crazy story had their own questions as well. One couldn't hold his tongue and bravely asked Maestro what he had done to their people. With a smirk, the Jade Beast would reply that he was feeling artistic. He needed materials, and the people provided them. The two men turned and froze. With haunted expressions, they saw the Maestro's artwork. A massive self-titled sign, with lifeless bodies decorating it. The men had no words. Maestro would now hold the two men close, before thanking them for their input and holding their heads before crushing the remaining life out of them. Holding the beaten body of Spider-Man 2099, the giant would walk through the halls of his home. "It's interesting that you would come along at this point in time, Spider-Man." He'd reveal that his interest in alternate worlds had allowed him to capture another individual who could be of use. She wasn't very cooperative though, and so Maestro had hopes that the sight of a beaten Spider-Man would inspire her to cooperate. He'd open his cell door and drop the spider's body into the dark holding. Inside the walls, a voice would come to life. "It's you. I don't believe it." Miguel tried to collect himself as he wondered who this was. "Oh no," he let out as he looked up. "It was Dr. Strange 2099. "Nice to be remembered," she responded. Meanwhile, in the corridors of this strange home, a man with concern would call out to Maestro. "Is there a problem, mister?" Maestro would converse with the man, but keep walking, sparing no time. The man believed the giant to have lost his mind. Placing Spider-Man in a cell boundless with Dr. Strange could not be a sound plan. Maestro was not concerned, though. "I know what I'm doing." The giant had no interest in explaining himself, nor did he have any interest in this world that he now has at his fingertips. He wanted something more, he'd say as he left this man's side and joined the women waiting for him. Back in the cell, Spider-Man was in the fetal position, wrapped in pain as Strange attempted to speak with him. Miguel's vision was blurry, his lungs hurt. Maestro had really damaged him. Strange wanted him to go closer to her. The binders they placed prevented her from projecting her powers. However, if Miguel could just get closer, there may be hope. Hearing this, Spider-Man would quickly get up, rushing to help, before crashing down again. Miguel was a mess, physically and mentally. He still couldn't understand why the world was this way. Strange would validate his feelings, stating that of course she knows it's not right. As the Sorcerer Supreme, she knows when the world around her changes, and also she is immune to its effect. She would cut the explanation short though, and instead now ask Spider-Man to fire his web at her. He'd hesitate before then firing towards her and hitting an invisible barrier. Now within the circle, a demon would be summoned by Strange to grab Miguel's web and pull him in closer. Once close enough, she would warn Spider-Man that this may sting a bit as they made contact. Less than a second later, Spider-Man would be screaming in agony, experiencing greater pain than he did at the hands of Maestro. His screams would send guards rushing into the room. They would see Miguel in pain and the sorceress still in chains. What had she done to the web crawler? "She patched me up," Spider-Man would reply, as he leaped up and sent the guard crashing into the wall. Spider-Man was back to full health, but Strange was still chained, and unfortunately for them, this guard didn't have the keys. Miguel was now determined to go back to 2015 and fix this mess, and conveniently, Strange knew that Maestro had a time machine, one made by someone else that he could not operate. Strange even knew how to get to it, though the issue of her cuffs still remained. If the marks on them could be removed, she would be able to free herself. This is when, again, the claws of Spider-Man 2099 would come in handy. With no restraint, he would scratch the marks off, allowing Strange to free herself. The sorceress would now reveal that the non-operational time machine was in what the Maestro called his trophy room. Miguel, while an expert in biology but not tech, was willing to try his hand at fixing it. Strange would lead the way, but before she could express her wish that they wouldn't run into the Maestro's guard, that's exactly what had happened. Gunshots would ring out, and determined to finish this before they could sound the alarm, Spider-Man was in top form. They had to keep moving. Gabriel, my mother, everyone in 2099 is counting on me to go back and fix this mess. I can't let him down. Strange would do her part too, and the duo would handle their first big obstacle and continue running. Unfortunately for them, a man peeked behind a curtain and saw the two running towards the trophy room. The two reached the Maestro's trophy room and their eyes grew wide. There were trophies, relics of all the great fighters of the past. Captain America's shield, Spider-Man's mask, Thor's hammer, and more. But most importantly was the sight of what they came looking for: the time machine. The platform before them was a time machine created by Dr. Doom. How he created it, no one knows. Turning it on is the mystery, one that Maestro himself had yet to solve. With the control in his hands, Spider-Man had no idea how to turn it on. And he would now speak the truth. Maestro is really Bruce Banner, and something like this is fit for him. But Strange would correct him, stating that Maestro doesn't like to reflect on who he once was and hasn't built anything in decades. Something in this trophy room would now catch Miguel's eye. He had something. Before him was a small arsenal of ruined Iron Man armors. They could work as power sources, and Miguel would get to work attempting to make something out of nothing. As he worked, though, he still found it weird that Maestro hadn't thought of this. As he worked, fear of Maestro was still there, and Strange agreed that she would be coming along too once they got the machine working. Seconds later, Miguel had figured it out. It would take a minute to boot up, but he really did the impossible. They were about to get out of here without facing Maestro again. Or so they thought. Right at their moment of victory, Strange would start to slump over, a blotch of red blood growing across her stomach. Her body would begin to fall, leaving Miguel clueless as to what was going on. She was dead.
Hello, Spider-Man. Ever heard of the Hood? I doubt you would have.
It was the Maestro wearing an invisible cloak. He reached down, pulling what he revealed to be a soul dagger from the back of the now-downed sorceress. Miguel, now enraged, would charge at the Jade Giant, dodging an attack from his enemy. Symbolically, the Hulkbuster armor, a relic of the past, stands nearby. Spider-Man would shoot his web at the dagger, yanking it from Maestro, before grabbing hold of a gauntlet on the Hulkbuster and blasting it, searing the skin of his green enemy. Maestro would punch back, but that blast drained him.
No! No!
He'd call out as he fell unconscious, watching Miguel use the time machine and leave him there with the lifeless body of Strange. Miguel appeared back in the past, a world he recognized. He had done it. But there was one issue. The remote for the time machine that he'd held was gone. He'd been holding it while teleporting, but now it was gone. Miguel could only assume it was linked to the platform. Was Maestro dead? Miguel couldn't be sure. He was left to only hope Maestro wouldn't find his way back here too. Get up. He's gone, a voice said next to the downed future Hulk. Maestro's eyes open now.
Good. Wouldn't want to ruin the surprise.
Wearing the outfit we'd just seen Strange in was now a red figure with purple eyes, confirming they had faked their own death at the hands of the Soul Dagger. Miguel had been working with a fake that entire time. The red demon from earlier was actually the one in control. It was holding Strange's victim. It was a trap this entire time. They had fooled Spider-Man so easily, and now they had Strange in their palm as well. It was time to complete their plans. Moments later, we see a quiet desert before devastation. Maestro would like Miguel to begin to appear in a different time period.
New Mexico. How little you've changed.
He'd grab hold of a glowing newspaper.
December 25th. Merry Christmas.
The giant would leap onwards to his objective.
And a Happy New Year.
If you want more action like this, then you definitely need to watch our video on the Hulk vs. Maestro.